Welcome to Live from Size Lounge, weekly conversations with alumni of Iowa State University. At the ISU Alumni Association, we strive to facilitate the lifetime connection of Cyclones everywhere, communicating, connecting, and celebrating Cyclone pride. This series is made possible thanks to the more than 43,000 members of the Alumni Association. If you are interested in staying connected to the university and receiving all the benefits and services of being a member, visit isualum.org to learn more. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome into Live from Size Lounge. My name is Matt Van Winkle with the ISU Alumni Association. Thanks so much for tuning in here, and we hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday. Today, we're going to be joined by Patrice Bailey. Patrice received his master's degree in agricultural education and studies from Iowa State in 2001. Last year, he was appointed to the position of Assistant Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, overseeing divisions of outreach and ag marketing, meat and dairy inspection, and feed and food safety. He has served the Twin Cities in several positions focused on bridging underrepresented communities of color to various available resources and advocating for them at the Minnesota State Capitol. So please help me welcome Iowa State alumni Patrice Bailey to Size Lounge. Hey Patrice, how are you?
I am great. It's so good to be here.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. So you're just one state north of us here in Minnesota, and you were just telling me no snow on the ground right now, so it's a good day, right?
No snow on the ground, but I do have my Iowa State sweater in the back and scarf.
I like it. I like it. Got to keep the Iowa State colors going. And hey, with the good football season and basketball season right here, we got to show that Cyclone spirit, right?
That's right. We can't complain.
That's right. Well, Patrice, I want to get into a little bit of your background before we talk about your current role right now. You grew up in New York, right? You got your undergraduate degree from Prairie View A&M, which is a public, historically black university in Texas. But why did you, coming from New York down to Texas, decide to jump into agriculture?
Well, I have family down in Houston, and Prairie View is actually 45 minutes north of Houston going towards College Station. And at the time, there was a really good agricultural program. And at first, I wasn't really interested in agriculture, so I wanted to go to law school. But once I got there, I started to really see what the program has to offer, then I was hooked.
Well, you ended up at Iowa State shortly after that, right? And tell me about how you chose Iowa State and what kind of led you to studying here in Ames.
Well, you know, after graduation from Prairie View, I had an opportunity to work at the Virgin Islands Department of Agriculture in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. My dad's from St. Thomas. And the commissioner down there just said, if you ever want to come down, give me a call. And I did that. And I started doing some work in forest stewardship. Hurricane George hit at the time. I said, I'm never going to be in a hurricane ever again. And so I started applying to grad schools, and Iowa State just had the best ag program in the country. So I applied, I got in, and ever since I drove on I-80 coming from New York to actually come to Ames, it's just been a great experience for me.
Tell me more about your time in St. Croix. That's so fascinating. You said your father is from there? Is that what you said?
My father is from St. Thomas.
St. Thomas.
I have family on all three islands, but the Virgin Islands Department of Agriculture actually has 3 offices, but the one I was stationed at was in St. Croix.
Interesting. I don't know much about St. Croix. I am fascinated by the life of Alexander Hamilton, who I know is from St. Croix. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. No, it's a beautiful island.
Yeah.
Not too far, maybe about 10 miles off the coast. There's Hess Oil, has a plant out there in the water. So whenever there's a hurricane and the lights are off in the islands, the lights are on and has oil. So you always know where the power is coming from. But it's a beautiful island. The trade winds are always about 75 to 85, even at night. So it's just a really great place to be.
Sure. I read the biography on him, and in the early chapters talking about his early life, he talked a lot about agriculture in that area, just how rich it is. And sugarcane, I believe, is grown out there, right?
Well, agriculture is a lot different there as opposed to here in the U.S. In regards to, we deal with land, acres, and they deal with name, ancestry in terms of access to the land. So I found that to be very interesting, that based on your last name depends on the type of entrance you will be able to gain.
That's interesting. Tell us about your time at Iowa State and some of the things that you learned about agriculture, being in this agricultural rich state here in Iowa. What type of things did you learn as a student at Iowa State?
When I first hit Curtis Hall, I was greeted by Dr. David Acker and Dr. Robert Martin, who was my professor there. And I just had a great intro. Nonetheless, that, to know that George Washington Carver was also a student there in Iowa State, I was just blown away just by the connections with students as well as with the faculty. It was just a really good kind of a family type atmosphere. And I was lucky with the grad students, the class that I did come in '99. They were just really an awesome group of folks for the 2.5 years I was there. It was a blessing. And so every time I get a chance to come down, I always come down and visit.
Well, last year you were appointed to the position of Assistant Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Talk about this position and what you've been doing here the last year or two.
Well, I can say it's a dream job for one. The things that I do, there's about 500 employees, 6 divisions, 4 commissioners, and 2 of the assistant commissioners, myself and Whitney Place, split the 6 divisions. And like you had mentioned in the intro, I have food and feed safety, meat and dairy, and ag marketing and outreach. And so a lot of the grants and loans and international and regional, local trade shows and the like are in my division. So it's just a great way to be able to serve Minnesotans. When I first came in, the lieutenant governor had asked me if I can, and the commissioner asked me if I could put together an emerging farmer task force.
Sure.
And so May of this year, it was signed into law for the working group, which is similar. But we had our first meeting November 6th. And so it's really kind of a full circle to be able to reach people in underrepresented communities within Minnesota to add them to the agricultural landscape.
How did that emerging farmers work group start, and why was there a need for that?
So the need was really trying to find out why 5 particular groups historically are not sort of counted within agriculture. So there's about 26 million acres that are in Minnesota. The average age of a farmer is 56, and most of the farmers here in Minnesota are white. Very few black farmers. Based on the 2017 census, there's fewer than 39 black farmers in Minnesota. I'm sure that number is a lot higher depending on those who haven't registered with the census, but tribal nations, which we have 11 of them here, tribal nations, people of color, women, people with disabilities, and veterans. Those were the 5 groups that weren't present. And so we did a listening session around the state last year around harvest time to really find out what are the barriers throughout the state. We were surprised to find out that as diverse as the state is regarding agriculture, the issues were similar with land access and finances sort of being the top 2 barriers that farmers mostly of color face. And so when we wrote the report that we submitted to the legislature, these are the things that we identified, including creating a working group that allowed the barriers that were identified to actually be worked on, once it was created. So that's where we are currently. And so we're just in the beginning phase of really giving a voice to some 17 members that have been identified to serve on this working group.
Interesting, really cool. Well, Minnesota ranks, I know, 5th in the nation for agricultural production, over 430,000 agricultural related jobs in the state alone.
Yeah.
What do you think people around the world should know about agriculture in Minnesota?
Well, they should know that Minnesota is home to about 26 to 28 Fortune 500 companies, of which 17 of them are agricultural based companies. It's a very rich and diverse state in regards to, if you go further northwest of Minnesota, there's not a lot of livestock up there, but what you do have is canola. There is fertile ground where they grow grass seed. Over to the east of the state, over where Duluth is. At one time, Duluth used to be the place where they had the most millionaires in the country. Used to be in Minnesota, in Duluth, because of the taconite and also the railroad industry. And so now, that taconite industry continues, but it's also where the Iron Range is. And if you go further south to Rochester, there's a huge belt of Somali farmers that are down there, and more traditional agriculture, corn, soybean, pork and turkey that's in those areas. So it's a very diverse space, and it's continually to grow. Whether it's goat farmers that are really trying to get more into like halal and kosher meat, and there's a huge demand for that. Of course, a lot of things post George Floyd has created a great opportunity for agriculture to identify the food deserts that have popped up because of food insecurity. And then you have the tribal nations across the state, and having the first indigenous lieutenant governor here, she is so committed to this working group that it's been great to have her support.
It's so interesting when you lay out the different regions in the state of Minnesota. And I mean, I guess anybody from Iowa really that's driven through the state knows how diverse the state is, right? I mean, you think of southern Iowa, you think of pretty similar to the type of environment you might see in Iowa, but really you're right. I mean, as you get more north, you hit Minneapolis, more of that suburban, that urban population. Then as you get farther up north towards Duluth, that Fargo, that northwest part of the state, I mean, it really changes. The
It
landscape
really
completely
changes.
changes. And just thinking about how diverse that agriculture is, seems
Yeah.
like the state of Minnesota really does embrace that type of that diversity in agriculture.
Well, you know, right now, you know, we've been really tackling diversity, equity, and inclusion
Mm-hmm.
with a focus on equity to make sure that all Minnesotans, especially the 5 groups that I identified, are having the opportunity to have the same access to agriculture. You know, I think of pre-COVID, I was going to some of the schools. You know, outreach is part of my area. So, you know, just talking to students about, you know, what does a farmer look like? And they'll have bib overalls and a John Deere hat. And I come in there with a suit and I say, well, can a farmer look like this? And they say no. But then I say, just imagine the possibilities. And more important is, you know, when you talk to students of color, by and large, you talk about the word agriculture, that doesn't resonate because that's not a word that they hear on an everyday basis. So when you can imagine, you know, Minnesota Ag in the classroom, or being able to talk to students about, you know, where their food comes from and what do you think canola looks like, and, you know, for them to just kind of think of, you know, the oil and the products that you see on the shelf. Many of those products are actually created here, as well as Iowa, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. You know, being neighboring, you know, fellow states.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great to see their eyes light up to think
Mm-hmm.
about, if I could do that in agriculture, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a really fantastic video, and I think I found it right on the Minnesota Department of Agricultural's YouTube page, of carrots that were grown in Minnesota. They showed the process of it being harvested, processed, washed, and ended up right back into the public schools there in Minnesota. I thought that was just so fascinating to see, and that's got to be one of the ways that you guys are embracing that the agriculture in the state, getting it right back into the public schools and feeding the kids in that state.
Yeah, we have a huge farm to school program, farm to table program, in which we're doing that very thing of working with our different farmers, especially Hmong farmers, Somali farmers, to be able to, you know, be able to work with different schools to, you know, to have fresh produce locally. Not
Yeah.
only to feed the kids, but also to support local businesses that are surrounding the school.
Right.
And so it's great to be able to see that.
And we're looking at some video too now of just some of these farmers markets that make up or that are in Minnesota. That's got to be another way that you guys are really reaching out to those communities, maybe those underserved communities, and in ways that you hadn't before.
Yeah, we actually have a program called Minnesota Grown. It's a famous brand that you know, the Department of Agriculture has had for about 35 years, and it's great to be able to go to Hy-Vee or, you know, go to Target and be able to see that Minnesota Grown logo, and know that that's supporting farmers from all over the state, especially with you know, Minnesota farmers markets as well.
Right. You mentioned just a bit ago that some of your work involves going into those schools and talking with kids about agriculture. How important do you feel it is to educate our youth about jobs in ag, and just the importance of knowing the process of where your food comes from too?
You know, honestly, I think it's crucial because, you know, kids can't be what they don't see. That's one of the things that I always tell, you know, tell kids all the time, that you know, whatever you can dream of what you would like to do, you could do it in agriculture. But since agriculture in the U.S., unlike say Venezuela or Cuba, where agriculture is sort of talked about and embedded throughout, the government and also the actual country. People don't always hear the word agriculture unless we're going through a food desert like we've been having with the meat processing issues across the country. And Minnesota serves 1/4. They provide 1/4 of all the meat in the country comes from Minnesota. So when that whole issue went down with some of these plants that went down, we had to make sure that students knew that you won't be able to have your brats or any of the hot dogs or bacon or anything. So when you start to go to the stores, talking to students about, you don't have those certain products on the shelf anymore because of this depopulation that's been happening. But it's been great to be able to talk to students about, being a lawyer or going to the USDA or having to, grow local in your backyard as a community garden.
Right. Well, Patrice, Iowa State University graduates are really using their degrees to make their communities, Iowa, and the world a better place. How do you feel you've been able to use your education from Iowa State to make an impact in the work that you do?
I didn't realize how many Iowa State alums are actually living in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's, the education from Iowa State has been phenomenal. The alumni support from your fellow colleagues, students to coming back to just walk around and see your old college has been so. It's a true homecoming. When I was there last August, it really felt really great to be able to come back home and talk to the dean, talk to the president about what's happening with agriculture, but also tie it back to this is what alumni should be doing. This is how we support Iowa State. And so it's great to be able to continue to talk to just people in general where they see your Iowa State alumni plate on your car, and it just seems like they kind of honk and say, "Hey, go Cyclones!"
We call it Cyclones everywhere.
Cyclones everywhere. That's right.
Well, Patrice, we're extremely proud of you and the work that you're doing in Minnesota. So thanks so much for joining us from Size Lounge today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. If anything you guys need, just give me a call. Sounds
great. Thanks, Patrice.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is Patrice Bailey. He is the current Minnesota Department of Agricultural Assistant Commissioner. So thanks so much for joining us today. Have a safe and happy week. We'll see you next time from Size Lounge. Thanks so much, everyone.